Let's begin by bowing in. And welcome everybody to the Buddhist Path of Awakening as we resume classes. And we're going through Francesca Fremantle's book, Luminous, Emptiness, the first part of which is preparation for the second part. The second part deals with the teachings on death. And the first part is the basic Buddhist teachings that we need in order to approach the death teachings. So we're on chapter 9, the threefold pattern of the path. And we'll just launch into it. Let's see. Am I forgetting anything? Michael? No. Okay. So these are the most fundamental teachings in Tantric Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism. We're starting with the teachings relating to the Trikaya. Trikaya literally means three, kaya, bodies, three bodies of the Buddha. And what these are three aspects of reality. The bodies of the Buddha are the three different aspects of reality which are omnipresent, always here. And we're going to go through them. She says, life is a continual dynamic process of appearance and disappearance. This is reality. In fact, this is a description, you might say, of the first kaya, the Dharma kaya. The three kayas are the Dharma kaya, the Sambhoga kaya, and the Nirmana kaya. And we're going to go through the Dharma kaya first. Dharma, in this sense, means truth. So this is the truth body of the Buddha. It's the essence of all phenomena. This is the way things actually are. Yeah. I'm just looking here. Each of these kayas, bodies, interpenetrates the others. So the first one, the Dharmakaya, the truth aspect of the body of the Buddha, has to do with emptiness, shunyata. And it's the fact that nothing has any true existence. Everything is a constant and unrelenting appearance and disappearance, just like these words, just like this gesture that I'm making on the screen, this appearance of this sweater. It appears and then you turn your head and it disappears. Life is a constant appearing and disappearing. And nothing has any true ongoing existence, although we like to think it does. But that is the very essence, that thought, thinking that things have true existence, is the very essence of confusion, of our ignorance. Because nothing has any true essence. Everything is a constant change. As soon as you point to what's changing, it's already gone and changed. This is the Dharmakaya. This is emptiness. This is shunyata. This is the fundamental nature of reality. Mm-hmm. I'm just looking at my notes. I don't want to let anything escape. So the second aspect of reality is the second body of the Buddha, the Sambhoga Kaya. Sambhoga is a word that is generally translated as the enjoyment, Sambhoga, enjoyment or pleasure body of the Buddha. And what it means is that while nothing has any true existence, everything is a constant appearing and disappearing in the instant. Nonetheless, as things appear and disappear, they communicate. They communicate all the qualities of the world. And this is the Sambhogakaya, the enjoyment body of the Buddha, all the qualities of our lives. the colors of the sweater, the sound of the voice, the taste of the glass of water with lemon in it. All of these things constitute the fact that while nothing has any true being, is a constant appearing and disappearing, nonetheless, as it appears and disappears, it communicates qualities. This is the Sambhogakaya, the enjoyment body of the Buddha. It's distinct from the Dharmakaya, which is the formless, the fact that nothing has any true existence. She says the two aspects, these are the aspect, by the way, of the Rupa Kaya. Well, let's come back to that. The Rupa Kaya actually is the fact that while nothing has any true existence, it seems to appear. So there's this glass for a moment. There is this voice for a moment. That's the form body of the Buddha, Rupa Kaya. And the Rupa Kaya is made up of both the Dharmakaya, the fact that nothing exists, and the Sambhogakaya, the fact that while nothing exists, that nothing is constantly communicating to us qualities. She says, Dharmakaya represents the accomplishments of one's own aim to attain enlightenment. We're moving into a different world, out of the world of things that exist and into this world of where things have no true existence but are constantly communicating. She says, the Trikaya is described as the very nature of mind, of reality. Within it, it is indivisible and complete in one. Emptiness, where nothing whatever exists, is the Dharmakaya. Clarity, the inner radiance of emptiness, is the Sambhogakaya. And the fact that all of this dawns everywhere without obstruction, we're looking at it right now, is the Nirmanakaya, the presence, the presentation. These three are complete in one intrinsic nature. So the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nirmanakaya are one. They're complete. They give us what we've got right now, what we're sitting in the midst of. And this is sometimes called the Svabhavakakaya, this unity of the three. Svabhava means literally own being. Ka is an adjectival form, kaya. So it's the kaya, the unity of these three kayas, which presents reality. She translates it as the body, this is Francesca, of intrinsic nature. This forms the structure of our being and the pattern in which we function. It is how things really are, though under the influence of ignorance, we experience it as three aspects of ordinary existence, corresponding to body, speech, and mind, and to coarse, subtle, and very subtle levels. So we think that these three things are somehow different, but they're actually just different ways of looking at what we're sitting in the midst of right now. The fact that nothing has any true ongoing being, it's a constant changing. This is the Dharmakaya, that while it changes, it communicates what it is, the red of this sweater, the sound of this voice, the richness, the beauty of the qualities. And the fact that while it's communicating these, it has a presence. And that presence is the Nirmanakaya. The Svabhavakakaya is the qualities, and the Nirmanakaya is the fact that all of this has a presence in the moment. Not only a presence, but they say that that presence is compassion. It's love. It's the joy of being. And all of this is a unity. Yeah, this corresponds to body, which is the Nirmanakaya, speech, which is the qualities, the way things express themselves, and mind, which is the meaning of it, the fact that it's just a constant coming and going with no substance. She says, we also experience the three kayas in a confused way. Deep sleep, we enter the Dharmakaya. Dreaming corresponds to the Sambhogakaya. And the waking state, when we wake up and here we are, that's the Nirmanakaya, the presence. We're talking about the nature, the very nature of reality as it is in its most fundamental sense or fundamental way. These three aspects, the fact that nothing has any true existence, that in spite of the fact that it has no true existence, it communicates endless qualities that don't last a second. They're just constant, like these words. And then the fact that all of this has a presence, this sweater, the person, the quality of this talk. She says, we also experience the three kayas in the death bardos. Yeah, this is getting a little advanced. We're going to be getting to this. That the luminosity of death in the culmination of the bardo of dying is the Dharmakaya. We die. There's no ongoing essence that endures even for a second. And then that while all this is happening, this constant dying and being reborn again, like what's happening right now in this room, in this class, this is the radiant display of the peaceful and wrathful deities. And when we begin to recognize this more and more, we're moving into the bardo, the interval, the state of reality, which is called the bardo of dharmata. And then when we take the form of a living being in the bardo of existence, the fact that each one of us has a life and a sense of being, this is the Nirmanakaya. So this experience of the Trikaya, the three bodies, is everywhere. It's in absolutely everything that we live, experience. It's in our lives before enlightenment, during enlightenment, and then after enlightenment. She says, I'm quoting, the Dharmakaya is present in the sense of openness, the source and background of all phenomena. The Sambhogakaya is present in the sense of energy bursting forth, the sacred magical quality of life. And the Nirmanakaya is present in the sense of phenomena continually arising, impermanent, yet vividly apparent. It's this presence, the Nirmanakaya. Again, she comes into the Dharmakaya, the quality of reality itself, free from the distortions of confused mind. And it takes a variety of forms. There are a lot of words that use, a lot of terms that use the word dharma in them to define them in terms of their relationship to reality. So for instance, there's dharmata. That means the essence, the ness, the thingness of reality and of all the things that we can experience. Free from distortions of confused mind, we can move into the world of dharmata, of reality. Then there's the dharma dhatu. Dharma dhatu means, the dhatu means space, and dharma means reality, the all-encompassing space that is nothing but contains everything. It has no fundamental essence, and yet everything that appears and disappears arises in the dharma dhatu. And then finally, the dharmakaya, which we've discussed. Trungpa Rinpoche says, the Dharmakaya arises unnecessarily out of infinite space. It is the actual experience of space, and in a sense, its first embodiment. That is why it is known as a body, because you can point to it, you can talk about it as we're doing here. It is self-existing awareness, undying state of absolute wakefulness, the Dharmakaya. It is the universal, all-pervading Buddha mind, self-knowledge of the awakened state. This is it. This is shunyata. When we move into shunyata, we are moving into the absolute knowledge of the awakened state, because nothing has any true being. We're giving up that myth of I and other, existence and non-existence. He says that therefore it is called the original or primordial Buddha, this state, the Dharmakaya. The Adi Buddha, that's the primordial Buddha, the Buddha who has never needed to awaken because it's already fundamentally awake. The Nyingmas, that's the old sect. You remember there are 4 sects in Tibetan Buddhism, and the oldest is the Nyingma sect. Their name means the old ones. And they were around when Padmasambhava first arrived in Tibet in the 8th century. And so the Nyingmas call this Samantabhadra, universal goodness. And they show this Buddha as Samantabhadra, symbolizing all of this. And he's seated cross-legged, smiling slightly in profound meditation. His body is deep blue, which symbolizes infinite space. He's naked, the state of complete simplicity and uncontrived naturalness. This is the Dharmakaya. In this state, the complexities of ego and the duality of samsara and nirvana have never arisen. His nakedness is a reminder that although we personify him as a Buddha, the principle of Buddhahood transcends all attributes, qualifications, and descriptions. The verse states that nothing whatever exists in the Dharmakaya. There is no essence of existence or non-existence. It's a myth, a mistake. But you need to understand what this means literally, beyond concepts of existence and non-existence. Trungpa Rinpoche describes it as a sense of fertility, pregnant emptiness, meaning it's always about to change, to give birth, to arise, as loud, as blue, as red, as sweet, as whatever it might be. In the completion stage of Vajrayana practices, that means the ultimate stage when you're really finished with it, the instructions will often say something like this: rest beyond thought in the unborn Dharmakaya, in the unborn state. You rest beyond thought in this. We really are the 3 bodies, whether we know it or not. We can simply relax into openness, neither following after thoughts nor suppressing them, without either acceptance or rejection. Then the mind in its natural state is revealed as the Dharmakaya, the body of truth. The Sambhogakaya, literally the body of enjoyment. That's what that means, Sambhogakaya. It's the visionary form of the deities. That means that all of this is holy, and we begin to see it that way, as an expression of holiness. The natural expression of the Dharmakaya ceaselessly radiating forth out of emptiness. It is the play of awakened energy, experienced as the fullness of joy and bliss. The play of awakened energy, experienced as the fullness of joy and bliss. This is the Dharmakaya. And then she quotes Blake. I don't know how many of you have read Blake. I read him in college. He was a mystical English poet who says, energy is eternal delight. That's the energy of this emptiness. You could read Blake. He's wonderful. I'm trying to remember. There's a famous poem. Oh, well, it won't come to my mind. So the Sambhogakaya is the dimension of communication. The dance of energy manifests as subtle vibrations of sound and light. That's because nothing exists. So everything can be constantly changing, expressing whatever. You know? changing from blue into purple, into red, from loud into soft, from sweet into sour, all these things. In the Sambhogakaya, all sounds of the whole universe reverberate with their true meaning as spontaneously expressions of the Dharma. Let's see how we're doing on time. Okay. They fill the whole of space. The mantras of the deities, Om Mani Padme Hum and all the other mantras, are the nature of those deities expressed as the form of sound. The deities means you're seeing it naked. You're seeing it stripped of your conceptual elaborations. You're seeing it vividly, incredibly vividly. And the mantras of them are seeing these qualities stripped of everything. Light radiates from the emptiness of Dharmakaya as the 5 colors of the 5 kinds of knowing, which we've talked about, the 5 Buddhas that crystallize into the forms of the 5 Buddhas and the other deities of the mandala. They aren't solid bodies of flesh and blood, but they're made entirely of light. They arise out of light and dissolve back into light. So this is the Sambhogakaya, the realm of sacred vision, portrayed in tantric art and brought vividly to life in meditation. It's sacred because it is stripped of our confusion, because of our attempt to label it, of our attempt to grasp it, and we're seeing everything just as it is. This is the most holy aspect of the Vajrayana. This constant, fresh, vivid communication of what things are. So the Sambhogakaya is the bridge between emptiness and form. Emptiness displaying itself as form revealing itself to be emptiness. That's what the Sambhogakaya is. It's a constant revelation of this form, this hand, this pink cheek, these words revealing themselves to be non-existent. Boom, they're gone. That's how they can communicate, which is the very essence of the Sambhogakaya, this communication. So the experience of the Sambhogakaya is to perceive the world directly and nakedly. Sense perceptions become clearer, sharper, and more colorful. The world is recognized as sacred, magical, and full of wonder. We begin to see things freshly, full of wonder. Blake describes this endlessly in his poetry. He really saw it. He had the vision. So the world contains all the vitality and passion of the emotions, free from the confusion that brings misery and pain. I mean, the emotions are the vivid colorfulness of our thoughts and feelings. There is a sense of fearlessness and play and continual discovery, an invitation to take part in the dance of life. The sole purpose of all this is to wake us up from our dreams of hopes and fears of things that are born and die. The deities are nothing other than wakefulness, our own awakened state. Then it says the natural self-existent symbolism of the world points always toward awakening to this beautiful, vivid, constant communication of the Sambhogakaya. Then the Nirmanakaya, the third kaya, the third body of the Buddha. The energy solidified into matter. It literally means the body of emanation. It's the embodiment of the energy of compassion, totally responsive and sensitive to the needs of all beings. Compassion here is not meaning feeling sorry for. It's about responsiveness, feeling that you feel you're moved by the beauty of the dawn and you respond to it, or whatever it may be. Someone's emotion touches your heart and you respond. So this Nirmanakaya is the activity of Buddhas in living form that we can see and hear. It responds to the needs of living beings in whatever way is most appropriate for them. Awakened beings don't have to be like the Buddha Shakyamuni. They can take any shape, pleasant and unpleasant, beautiful or ugly, and play any role in any situation, whatever is required for the benefit of others. And the benefit means waking people up from the dream of existence. The Tibetan for Nirmanakaya is tulku. You've heard great lamas called tulku. Tulku literally means Nirmanakaya, emanation body. Tul, which is usually spelled S-P-R-U-L, we won't go into that. It means emanation. And ku, S-K-U, this is the way of transliterating the Tibetan letters, is the word for body, kaya. Yeah, the Nirmanakaya manifests directly from wisdom and compassion. Compassion means involvement with, sympathy for, and constant communication with. An enlightened person may have made a vow to take birth in a particular form, and the power of that intention will bring about its manifestation. There may be several different emanations, embodying different aspects of one powerful stream of enlightened energy. This is what enlightened people do. They take birth in a particular form. It might be all the time in this one body. It may be dying and being reborn in a new body. In Vajrayana, the guru is always regarded as the Nirmanakaya. So any guru you've got is a Nirmanakaya, a manifestation body of the Buddha. Doesn't matter whether he or she has been recognized as a tulku, in other words, as having a particular link with some figure from the past. That doesn't matter at all. Learning to see the Buddha in the guru is the first step towards seeing all beings as Buddha. So you will connect, you will meet someone who impresses you so much with their spiritual understanding and their ability to communicate it, that you will regard them as a manifestation of Buddha, of the Buddha, of enlightened energy. And this is the first step towards seeing Buddhas everywhere. And then it says the sense of living the Nirmanakaya principle. Remember, Nirmanakaya is enlightened body, comes about through applying the techniques of meditation in daily life. Meditation and action. Whatever we do is appropriate, and all our activities bear fruit. The whole environment becomes our friend instead of our enemy, so that we feel completely at home in the world, and enlightenment is everywhere. Finally, we're going to just talk about body, speech, and mind. These are the three doors of the Trikaya. When they are transformed into instruments of awareness, body, speech, and mind, instead of confusion, they become Vajra body. That means enlightened body. Vajra speech, indestructible, enlightened speech, and Vajra mind, the three doors to awakening. An awakened person has these three, and they're no longer identified with ego. Body refers to our physical manifestation, the visible, tangible aspect of our being, and this is the Nirmanakaya. It is the outward expression in material form of our mind and energy, body, Nirmanakaya. It is the level on which other people see us and we perceive them. Since this extends us out into the world, In a certain way, the environment is also part of our body. We're not enclosed within a solid wall, and there is no real barrier between inside and outside. The body is our total experience of ourselves as physical beings in the material universe. It's the basis of the spiritual path, this body. Mindfulness, which is the foundation of all Buddhist practices, begins with the body. We are mindful of the body. We come back to awareness of the body. So mindfulness here is the instrument by which we perform the activities of the enlightened body, Nirmanakaya. Still got some good time. Body, speech, and mind. The three doors, they're called. Both body and its environment spontaneously appear out of emptiness at every instant, the body and the whole environment. It has no solidity or substantiality. See, everything is changing as you look at it, as you become aware of it. It is indestructible because there is nothing to it that can be destroyed. Trungpa Rinpoche said, things are there because they are not there. Otherwise, they could not exist. How's that one? Should I repeat that? Things are there because they are not there. Otherwise, they couldn't exist because they're not actually there. They present. They're just a constant changing presentation. All the forms, when we start practicing deity yoga, you will visualize Vajrayogini, this 16-year-old naked dancing girl with hair in flames, and there are just tons of them, these deities. And all these forms are made of light, as insubstantial as a rainbow, yet more vivid and beautiful than any light seen by the eyes. Because we are beginning to move into this magical world of deity, seeing things as they truly are, which is full of light and constant change. And all of these things arise out of nothing, appear, communicate to us, like these words, like this person is sitting in front of you now, and then they dissolve back into emptiness, into nothing, as this class will. This cuts through any attachment we might have to these things and prevents us from falling into the trap of belief in their substantial existence. This class has no substantial existence. It just is an appearance that communicates to you. Maybe it will wake you up, and then it's gone. Speech is the dimension of energy, communication, and emotion. It unites body and mind. On the one hand, you've got the body, which is this thing here. On the other hand, there's the mind, which understands and knows, and speech is the communication between them. It doesn't just mean words or sounds produced by the voice. It refers to emotional energy, which fuels all forms of expression. It's the essence. Communication is the very essence of speech, both between mind and body and between each individual and the world outside. So we see we're moving into this world of where things don't have any true existence. They're a constant presentation of communication that appears and disappears. We're being asked to live in this world. So we're constantly receiving messages from everything around us and responding to them by sending out our own messages in all kinds of ways. And the more we begin to let go of the notion that I and other exist in some true way, like they're ongoing, that everything is a constant presentation, we begin to become expert communicators. She says the sense of Vajra speech, that's enlightened speech, develops from becoming aware of the inherent emptiness of speech, the space around words, the silence that envelops sound, the openness from which communication arises, the absence of ego at its very root. All languages are sacred, not just Sanskrit. Any word or sound can be perceived as mantra. If we hear the emptiness behind the sound, we can become sensitive to its inner quality. It is the message in the music of non-self and awakening. This is the poetry of Dharma when it flows from the sense of spaciousness. So she says mantra, when we recite mantras like Om Mani Padme Hum. I don't know if we know this person, do we? No, I think not. Mary, nope. And then there's finally mind. Mantra, but before we get to mind, mantra is the living presence of the deity in sound. When we begin to let go of ideas of existence, non-existence, good, bad, all of those things. Just as the visual image is its living presence in form. Like the visualized forms, sound of mantra dissolves back into emptiness at the end of every statement. Through this practice, we learn to experience everything we say and everything we hear as mantra, resounding, yet empty, like an echo. And finally, mind. This is the invisible aspect of our nature, the source of speech and body. It's not just intellect. It is the heart and mind in one. Its meaning, its heart, its feeling, its perception, consciousness. It originates in the body, but it is mind that experiences these emotions. We say that they come from the heart, emotions, but it is mind that is aware of them. Thoughts, ideas, and concepts, all of them, however powerful they may be, however strongly they demand our attention, are just different kinds of mental activity. They all dissolve back into the emptiness of the Dharmakaya, like everything else. Everything dissolves back into the emptiness of the Dharmakaya. This is what we are beginning to wake up to as confused beings. And this is good. In our ordinary confused condition, what we call our mind should really be called mindlessness. But when confusion is cleared away, mind is revealed as direct, intuitive awareness, the intelligence of the heart. It's not saying, yes, this is good, that's bad, I'm smart, I'm dumb, I'm unenlightened, I'm enlightened. It's not saying any of that. What mind is doing is just being aware of what is happening now in the present moment. The word for mind in Sanskrit is chitta. It's one of the words. And it encompasses both heart and mind. The first step in meditation is to calm the mind. Then we can begin to gain insight into its nature. It's like space, mind. In the openness and clarity of the true nature of mind, all thoughts arise and fall, leaving no trace, like birds flying through the sky. Let me read that again. Mind is like space. In the openness and clarity of the true nature of mind, like space, all thoughts arise and fall, leaving no trace, like birds flying through the sky. Good and bad, that line from the sadhana that was quoted earlier today, I think. Good and bad, happy and sad, all thoughts vanish into emptiness, like the imprint of a bird in the sky. That's a line from the sadhana of Mahamudra. Only the clear sky remains. This is the indestructible Vajra mind, and thoughts and emotions just arise and pass away into it, and they are utterly, utterly gone. Isn't that amazing? That everything we think exists, like in some way, it just arises and passes and is gone. The mind of the meditator becomes one with the mind of the deity, the state of wakefulness. That's becoming one with this mind here that's empty, empty of thought. Trungpa Rinpoche says, at the tantric level, the positive experience of non-existence, a positive experience of non-existence, that's this. We're in the middle of it. Comes about when the mind is completely tuned in to the magical possibilities of life. So you want magic? You want the real meaning of life? We rest in this mindless emptiness. At the level of the Vajra Mandala of mind, this is the reality of mind, subconscious gossip, where the continual background of chatter and ongoing commentary of our thoughts is completely cut through, completely gone. Mind is completely open. This experience of mind creates a continuous celebration in dealing with life directly and simply. At the Vajra level of mind, every situation takes place very simply on its own, and mind relates with whatever arises quite simply. We've got, that's about half. So you want to take over, Michael?
All right.
Want to give anybody any burning questions or demands or comments? This is the most profound stuff right now. It's the entrance into Tantra. The true description of what the real is. Any brave souls? Michael?
Well, I'm going to suggest then that we take just a moment to sit for a moment. Take a good posture as always. Allow ourselves to relax body and mind. Maybe work with the breathing. Straighten our backs. Just feel the breath. Just simply be present. Let body and mind relax. Let go. Just settle. So, when we experience the open, spacious quality of mind, it could be some sense of the Dharmakaya, just possibility, mind open to anything and everything. I have to admit, when I read this chapter for the first time, I was not taken much by her introduction, but one of the good things about teaching is that I have to read the chapter several times to make sure I understand and can present something. And second time through, I was actually really taken by her introduction. So just the first sentence, the opening sentence, whether we consider the world around us, our own nature, or the nature of enlightened beings, we find that nothing exists in a static condition. So that's everything. The world around us, our own nature, the nature of enlightened beings, that nothing is static. And yet most of the time, if we're honest with ourselves, that's not how we experience the world. We find it difficult in meditation practice to even simply stay present, to rest in a mind of nowness, where we're able to see that in fact things aren't static, that things go through a process of constant change. And most of the time, perhaps I should speak for myself, we project our past into the present or project ourselves into the future. And rather than seeing things as vivid, alive, energetic, we tend to see our concepts, our preconceptions, our thoughts, our ideas of things rather than the things themselves. And it's only when we slow down and let go that we realize there really is a very different way of perceiving the world. And that's really what all of these teachings are about, is coming to understand that there is a different way of being in the world that's really quite accessible to us, that it's actually the true nature of our mind. And that once we allow ourselves to settle, slow down, whatever words we want to use to describe what it is, let go, that it's right there and that we can experience it in that way. That the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya, the Trikaya principle, if we actually can relate to things with the mind of the present, it becomes quite obvious to us. It becomes quite clear that that is how the world is. That even in a few moments of meditation just now, one moment might be looking at the flicker of a candle on the shrine in front of me. I might be hearing the clicking and ticking of the radiator, the wind blowing outside, the feeling of the cushion underneath me, and that moment to moment, mind changes. Moment to moment, our experience of the world changes. And this is why in the chant it says that the essence of realization, that everything arises is fresh. Awareness is the body of meditation. Whatever arises is fresh. And that this is the essence of realization. And we can come to see this quite directly in meditation practice. So in the material that John presented, it talked a little bit about the, in terms of body, speech, and mind, visualization practice. In the Vajrayana, there are many different methods for waking up, many different methods for recognizing the nature of reality, the nature of our mind, the nature of the world around us. And they're sometimes categorized in different ways. The visualization practice is often called creation or generation stage. And then the practices that follow are called completion stage. So one type of completion stage practice is exactly what John just said, that at the end of this practice, we're urged to rest beyond thought in the unborn Dharmakaya. Or sometimes it's even more simple than that. We just simply let go. And the instruction is, as long as it remains, just rest in that. And in that way, there's a very direct experience of the nature of mind, a very direct experience of luminous awareness, luminous cognizance, luminous clarity, empty awareness, whatever, there are many, many different words. So the third of the three different sets of three that she's presenting to us are what she calls the three levels, which are the coarse, subtle, and very subtle level. And these map onto the Trikaya, they map on body, speech, and mind. They map onto a lot of different things. And the reason that they're presented is that some of the experiences that we'll be reading about later that characterize the bardo of dying, the bardo of dharmata, relate directly to different things that happen in regard to the coarse mind and body, the subtle mind and body, and the very subtle mind and body. And she says they relate mainly to body and mind, but she says speech, the communication potential is implied. So the three levels again are the coarse, the subtle, and very subtle. By subtle, I actually looked up definitions of subtle to be certain that, to be clear really. And I think the use of the word subtle, I'm always curious what the words are in Tibetan and Sanskrit that these are translations of. But the use of the word subtle means something that's not immediately obvious or comprehensible, or difficult to detect, or elusive might be another word for it. But what makes it elusive is our fixation on ego and our fixation on taking the things around us to be real in a way that they're not. And that's why, again, to go back to the opening sentence, that nothing is static, that everything is in a constant process of appearing and dissolving, appearing and disappearing. It's just that we get so caught up in the immediate appearance that we are often somewhat amnesic, you could say, in amnesia about the fact that things fade away. And we just get caught up we get absorbed in current appearances and ignore or are forgetful of the fact that things are actually arising and dissolving all the time. Another way of understanding that process of arising and dissolving relates to interdependent origination, the constant changes, constant flux of causes and conditions that make things appear and disappear. But in any case, subtle is, again, it's not immediately obvious or comprehensible, difficult to detect, elusive. Sometimes delicate is another word. She says that we should remember these three aspects, of course, subtle and very subtle, are indivisible, as is the Trikaya, as are ultimately body, speech, and mind. In meditation practice, we try to bring body, speech, and mind together. But it's actually, they are together, it's because of our distraction that we don't perceive them that way. And that these three correspond to the waking state, the dream state, and the deep sleep state. That is to say that coarse body, coarse mind corresponds to the waking state. That's what we're experiencing now. That the dream state is more connected with subtle body, and that what she calls the dimension of energy, and that ultimately this derives from the very subtle essence of our being. And she says that it's important to keep in mind when we're talking about the inseparability of the three, that it's not so much like a stacking of Russian dolls where one's inside the other, but that it's more a spectrum of energy flowing back and forth from the most subtle to the most material. So again, another way to say that is that rather than thinking of these aspects as things, we could think of them as processes. They're not static, existing things in the sense of anything solid or definite. So basically, again, waking life corresponds to the experience of coarse body and coarse mind. When we go to sleep, we think we're slipping into unconsciousness, she says, but actually what we're slipping into is subtle consciousness, which is the nature of dreams, which she calls a strange hallucinatory version of the waking state. And then in deep dreamless sleep, there's very subtle consciousness. So we actually experience these things in one way or another all the time, as with many other things related to Vajrayana practice. The problem is we don't recognize them for what they are. And she says, even while we're awake, our thoughts, feelings, and perceptions are continually appearing and disappearing. So again, we're back to the opening sentence, the reality, which if we are able to rest in present mind, becomes quite clear to us. The reality that things are constantly appearing and disappearing, a constant process of change, a constant process of interdependent causes and conditions, causing things to appear, dissolve, disappear. All phenomena, she says, arise out of the infinite potentiality of emptiness. through the subtle levels until they appear in the coarse realm, and everything dissolves back into emptiness in a never-ending process of transformation. So to begin, so that's just an introduction to the three levels altogether. And she begins talking about the coarse level, which she says is the body as we usually think of it. This we know, this we experience, it's the material body. It's what we tend to identify with, and for that reason it's the experience that is the source of apparent duality of subject and object to its greatest extent, because we identify with the body. This is me. And from a conventional point of view, that makes sense. But again, the more we look, the more we realize how even this body that we think we are is in a constant process of change. We think back to who we were a day ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago. I won't keep going, but I could. But if you realize that it's not one solid thing, our bodies are a process of constant change. But we identify with body, conceptually see it as a fixed reference point rather than, again, fresh, the essence of realization. And out of that, we can create all kinds of dualities. We see the world around us as separate from the experience of mind, rather than realizing that all phenomena are the reflected appearances of mind, which when we settle in meditation, we come to have some realization of, that in fact, what we take to be outer objects are actually the appearances of mind itself. In any case, she says the body is formed by the inner coarse elements, while environment is formed of outer coarse elements, and that inner and outer are linked together through the senses. And the coarse mind, so that's coarse body, the material body, and coarse mind is the consciousness that operates through the senses. It makes up the whole experience of waking life: sight, sound, smells, taste, thoughts, feelings, all of those things. But the ultimate cause of this is the very subtle mind, the essential nature of mind, which continues from life to life. She says that coarse levels of consciousness depend on the brain and senses, but ultimately arise out of very subtle level of mind. The bulk of this section she really spends on the subtle level and subtle body, subtle mind complex. And this is helpful to have some sense of, because again, a lot of what we will be reading about when we read about the bardo of dying and the bardo of dharmata relate to more subtle level and very subtle level of body, as opposed to the material physical bodies that we inhabit, that we identify with, and out of which we create the illusion of ego and the illusion of a real existent outer world that's somehow separate from mind. So the subtle level, and this corresponds to Sambhoga, the coarse level sort of corresponds to Nirmanakaya, manifestation, appearance. The subtle level, subtle body and mind is the complex, she says, it's the complex intermediary between essence and manifestation. So again, Sambhogakaya, it corresponds to speech. She says that transmutation takes place at this level because it is the matrix from which the coarse body and mind arise. So they're affected by any change that occurs within it. So it's in fact working with subtle body experience, particularly in visualization practice, that has an impact on the experience of the coarse body and mind. And she says this must be gradual and careful, done under the guidance of an experienced teacher. She connects the level of subtle mind to the state of consciousness in dreams, and says this is also what we enter in the bardo of dharmata. So you can think about that in the dharmata we have a seeming body, which is very much like the mental body we experience in dreams, where in a dream we see ourselves and we see an apparent world around us, but it's all mind. It's all, when we actually look at what a dream is, we realize it's all mind, that the appearance of duality, the appearance of a self, the appearance of a world external to oneself, is all created, all a projection of mind. She also says that we can enter into this in the completion stage of Vajrayana practice. So there's a threefold, in describing the subtle body, there's a threefold aspect of nadi, prana, and bindu. So if you can think of the subtle body, you could think of it in some ways as the energetic body or the experiential body. It's both the same and different, I guess you could say, as the coarse body, but obviously there's very real differences, and yet they're connected, so you can't say they're totally separate either. And she says they're inseparable. Nadi, prana, and bindu are aspects of completion stage practice in Vajrayana. It is the practice of subtle body, where one works with the vital energies of the body. The idea is to dissolve duality, dualistic perceptions, and realize the ultimate nature of reality through connecting with vital energies, essentially. So nadi is a word that can be translated, or has the meaning of like a tube or channel. And again, as she says, they're not physical or perceivable, but it's a network of energy flow that creates the basic structure of the subtle body. That nadis are imagined as luminous, hollow tubes through which energy flows. That the movement or current what the energy that moves through the nadis is prana, which can mean breath, spirit, energy, life. I think it's quite similar to the notion of chi or ki in other traditions. And that bindu literally means dot or drop. It's what she describes as the creative essence of mind. It's what's carried by prana through the nadis, like a rider on a horse. So there are a lot of different descriptions of nadi, prana, and bindu in different tantras. And the details really vary based on the tradition. So in different sadhanas and different, the Nyingma, Kagyu, all the different sects, there are different descriptions of exactly how some of these things are. But basically, as she says, it's theoretically pictured as a defined structure, but in practice it's more elusive or subtle. And it can only really be understood by intuition and direct experience. Intuition meaning not through any kind of rational reasoning process, but just has to be directly experienced, intuitively experienced on a feeling level. So to begin with the nadis, she says, in a sense, the nadis don't exist as a ready-made framework. In other words, it's not, but they're created as prana flows along them. They're the pattern of the flow of prana. So again, this gets at their subtle nature. There are a lot of different kinds, names and descriptions and types of nadi, prana, and bindu in different tantric traditions, and they can sometimes vary, be it direct variance or contradiction. But and what she says is in what she presents, that she's only going to present a broad picture of the subtle body so that we can understand the process of what happens with the subtle body at the moment of death. And that if we actually want to learn the precise details of particular practice, that we should do that from a qualified guru in the context of particular practice. And I will say that I think, generally speaking, many teachers consider some of these teachings to be important to be kept secret because they're very easily misunderstood. They are very easily, there's a real danger of spiritual materialism with them. That they are practices where there's a very much a very definite sense of effort and then letting go. And that if they're not practiced correctly, if they're not practiced with some understanding of emptiness, of egolessness, and compassion, that they can lead to all kinds of problems. Basically, there's a lot of warnings about the ways in which these practices, in particular, can be misunderstood when they fall under when they're done for ego-oriented purposes, I guess you could say. And so, again, this is just going to be a very general description of the subtle body. In terms of the subtle body, she says the axis of the subtle body is what's called the avaduti or central channel. which she says is a shaker because it shakes off the duality of subject and object. I'd never heard that before, so that was interesting to me. But anyway, the idea is that there's a central channel, a central nadi that goes from the, she says it starts from the point between the eyebrows to the crown of the head and then down to the base of the spine or the genitals. And this is the central channel, the main channel. And as she says, when prana is brought into the central channel, through the central nadi, through the practice of yoga, which involves breath work, visualization, there's very specific practices to do this. But when prana is brought into the central channel, one attains the realization of bliss and emptiness. Ordinary dualistic consciousness becomes transformed into awakened knowledge. So that's the main central channel running right through from the crown of the head down to the base of the spine. And then there are two other nadis that are main nadis called the Lalana and the Rasana, which are usually described as Lalana on the left and the Rasana on the right in the Abhiduti, and they're right, they follow along with the central channel. She says that Lalana means playful or seductive, symbolizing the objective pole of experience, the attraction of objects to the senses. And Rasana means taste or tongue, symbolizing the subjective pole, the enjoyer of experience. So the idea here is that when prana is in the secondary channels, let alone all the other channels of the body, that it lends itself to duality. That the objective pole of experience is the attraction of objects to the senses, and the other is the enjoyer of the experience. You have a perceiver and perceived, enjoyer and enjoyed, and that creates an imbalance. Whereas when prana enters into the central channel, then there's clarity and there's luminous awareness, empty awareness. So basically, as she says, there are a lot of variances within different practices and traditions. Most typically, the Lalana is white and the Rasana red. The Avadhuti is usually blue. But sometimes it's different. Sometimes the nadis are said in some practices to be reversed in women than men. But as she says, the underlying significance of the right and left nadis, the Lalana and Rasana, is that they point to a fundamental duality. That when prana becomes unbalanced, that it lends itself to dualistic experience. And then, so those are the three main nadis, and then there are 72,000 minor nadis that spread throughout the body, branching out from the Avadhuti. And as she says, the image of thousands of nadis spreading throughout the body, bearing confused energy that flows in all directions, gives a vivid picture of the distracted, dispersed awareness of the human condition. So this notion of subtle body is actually really important in Vajrayana practice. And even in our meditation posture, where we talk about the different elements of meditation, there is a correspondence to subtle body. I won't go into all of it, but I will say that basically straightening the back straightens the nadis. That relaxation and stillness of body allows prana to settle. There's an intimate relationship, as we'll see in a little while, between prana and movement of mind. And when the body and mind settle, prana settles, which is why it's so important in meditation practice not to try to forcefully make any effort to create or contrive any state of mind, because that causes movement of thought. It causes the prana to become unsettled. Again, there's an intimate connection between movement of mind and movement of prana through the nadis. And the idea is to let the mind naturally settle. And we might think that means that we should have no thoughts, but in fact, any attempt to make a no-thought experience or a non-thought experience is based on thought and just creates further disturbance. So that's why relaxation or non-contrivance is so emphasized in meditation practice. The idea is to just let things naturally unwind and to let prana naturally settle. So at this point, I'm actually going to ask John to lead us in the breathing exercise, which is a very simple, subtle body exercise compared to some of the ones that we could do. But I think it would be a good thing to do at this point to give us some sense of what it means to experience energetic, subtle body. So John, I'm going to toss it back to you.
unexpected as this is. Okay, I'm going to teach you. Some of you already have received this teaching. This is the teaching of the working with the subtle body and the energies of the subtle body. And there are three main ones that we're going to be dealing with. I do this every day. I just did it about an hour and a half ago as part of my Vajrayana practice. It's the first thing I do when I do this Vajrayana practice. You can see it over here on the front of the shrine. These working with the subtle energies. And what we do is, so I'm going to just lead you through it. There's a hand gesture that you need to learn. You take your thumb and you put it at the base of your ring finger and bring your ring finger down over the thumb on both hands. And you're going to put your knuckles, see these right here, down on your thighs, right at your hips. So you've got like this. The ring finger is coming down over the thumb and the knuckles are at your hips. And then what we're going to do, the first thing you do is you take your right arm, right hand, and you thrust it out like this. And you bring it back and you close off your right nostril and you visualize breathing in through the left. This is the rasana. Breathing in, and this varies from one teacher to the next. So don't worry if you find out you get it differently from somebody else. But you're going to breathe in red air. This is full of passion. Take a deep breath and you hold it. This actually what you're breathing in wisdom air into the central, and this comes in into the central channel. And then holding your right nostril closed, you're going to forcefully breathe out red air. Like it goes weak, strong, weak. So like that. And then breathe in again. And you're breathing in blue wisdom air into the central channel. There are three channels. One is the central channel, the avaduti, that he is described in the reading, goes roughly from about the top of the head down to the sexual center. And the other goes from the right nostril, again, down on the right side to the sexual center. That's the rasana. And on the left is the lalana. And it goes up like this into the head, both of them, these right and the left, and then down into the central channel. So here we go. Let's start again. Hands down on the hips in this position. Take a deep breath in. You're breathing in blue wisdom air into the central of these three channels, right? The avaduti, it's called. Hand out, right hand out, closing off the right nostril and out the left. You're breathing out red, passion. And then you breathe in with blue wisdom air. Roll the hand down to the hip, left arm out, and my arms don't work very well. Close off the left nostril and breathing out through the right, weak, strong, weak, white, aggression. And breathing in blue wisdom air. And that comes down into the central channel, hand down to the hip. Do it again. Right arm out, closing off the right nostril, and breathing out through the left, red, passion. And breathing in, blue, white, wisdom wind. Comes down into the central channel, hand down to the hip, left arm out. Close off the left nostril and breathing out through the right, white, aggression. Breathing in, blue, white, wisdom in, wind. Roll the hand down to the hip. And then one more time, the third time. Right hand out, closing off the right nostril and breathing out through the left, red. Weak, strong, weak. Like that. And then breathing in, blue. Wisdom wind. Rolling this hand down to the hip. Left arm out, closing off the left nostril and breathing out aggression, gray. Breathing in, blue-white wisdom wind, hand down to the hip, and relax 3 times. This is, you're purifying the winds, okay? And you'll find that when you get instructions from different places, different people, they vary what's on the right or the left, the red or the white. In the red, when I've been doing it now with you, the red was on the left. We closed it out and you breathed out there, you're breathing out red wind, and the white was on the right. You'll find other versions where they switch it around, so don't worry about it. Okay?
So hopefully there's a bit of experience of energetic, subtle body in doing that practice. In fact, some of the visualizations and practices become very complicated, and she goes on to describe some of them in this book in terms of the chakras. But just to say a little bit about prana, again, that it's energy, that it's universal, it's every manifestation of energy in the world is the vibration of prana. Trungpa Rinpoche called it the tracks of the world. And on the personal level, it includes anything that we might consider mental, emotional, physical, or nervous energy. It's what regulates the body and every aspect of our experience. Prana is in Tibetan medicine given names to indicate 5 main modes of operating in the body. And usually then they're called the winds. So but they're not different kinds of energy, but one energy, but in different functions. So there's a life-holding wind, or energy, a pervading energy, what she calls an ascending energy or ascending wind, an equal wind, and descending, or something that's called downward-facing wind. And the problems in terms of our both mental and physical state develop when there are imbalances in the prana in the body, where there are blockages, where there's excess or deficit, or whether it's too rapid or too sluggish. So that's with prana. So in addition, when in more elaborate visualizations along the central channel, there are chakras, chakra literally meaning wheels. And in some meditations, they're seen as spinning wheels, which is a way of invoking energy. But in others, they're visualized as lotuses with different petals. And from the petals, more nadis spread out through the rest of the body. The side nadis can create knots around the central channel at these points where there's this branching out, causing constriction and preventing prana from entering and flowing within the avadhuti. And she says that at death, the knots loosen so that the prana can enter the central channel. But it can also be made to enter the central channel through the power of meditation, which is what we just had a taste of just now. As with nadis and pranas, the chakras vary from practice to practice. In terms of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, there are 5 chakras related to the 5 Buddha families, the 5 elements, the 5 winds, and so on and so forth. So at the head, actually in the head, depending on the tradition, there are 2 chakras, one at the crown of the head and one between right in the middle of the forehead. But in any case, in relation to the Book of the Dead, or liberation through hearing, as she calls it, the chakra at the top of the head is connected with Vairochana, the Buddha of the Buddha family, connected with the element of space, marked with a white syllable Om. And this is connected with the pervading energy that circulates throughout the body, distributing vital energy and governing movement of the limbs. That's the pervading wind, pervading energy. At the throat chakra, there's Amitabha, the Buddha of the Padma family, connected with the element of fire, marked with a red Ah, so Om Ah. And this connects with ascending energy, which is responsible for speech, taste, and swallowing. But it's also sometimes said to be the seat of the descending wind. Again, it varies from tradition to tradition and practice to practice. At the heart center is Akshobhya, the Buddha of the Vajra family. Remember, connected with mirror-like wisdom, connected with the element of water. And with this, it's marked with the blue syllable Hum. And this is the life energy that controls the movement of the breath and gives clarity to the mind. At the navel center is Ratnasambhava, the Buddha of the Ratna family, marked with a yellow syllable Sva, connected with the element of earth. And this is the equalizing energy that circulates among the internal organs and regulates digestion and keeps things in balance, and also circulates inner heat. And at the base of the spine, at the level of the sexual organs, is the chakra known as the secret place. And this is where Amoga Siddhi, the Buddha of the Karma family that we talked about when we talked about the 5 Buddha families, connected with the element of air, marked with the green Ha. And it's the location of the descending energy, the downward wind that flows downward, relates to bodily functions of elimination. And again, sometimes the ascending and descending energies are switched between the throat and the base of the spine. She says that the 5 Buddha families embody the transcendent qualities of body, speech, mind, quality, and action, and the 5 chakras are experienced as focal points of these principles. And by meditating on these chakras as the mandalas of the Buddhas, their energies are awakened and transformed into the 5 Buddhas dwelling within us. She says that the first 3 chakras are important in the earliest stage of Vajrayana practice as focal points of body, speech, and mind. And in many Guru Yoga practices, is a meditation of the Guru being present in front of us, and that light rays from the Guru's head, throat, and heart center enter our head, throat, and heart center at the conclusion of the practice with white, red, and blue light. And that this transforms body, speech, and mind into Vajra body, Vajra speech, and Vajra mind. She said some interesting things about mind being located in the heart, which is how it's seen in the Indian and Tibetan tradition. And she says certainly ancient Indians knew about the brain, and that the head was considered most important and honored part of the body. But I like what she said here, and I'll just quote it directly. Our sense of individual identity as embodied beings, together with the coarse levels of consciousness that depend on the mental functions of the brain, is felt to be in the head. The head is the focus of our experience of embodiment. And again, remember when we talked about coarse body, we talked about identification with the body as being the origin of dualistic split, ego and other, self and other. So what she says next is, as the meditator rests more and more in non-conceptual awareness, without the undercurrent of thoughts, emotional disturbances, and sensory distractions, mind in the sense of awareness and insight is felt to increasingly dwell in the heart chakra, the central point of the subtle body. So again, it's bringing energy into the central channel and realizing the awakened nature of mind. Bindu is some things about Bindu. It's just essentially the concentrated essence of mind, the generative impulse, the quintessence of creative potential, polarized into red and white Bindus, male and female, that always are seeking to unite. And like positive and negative charges on an energetic level, this is another way to understand them. And that into tantric traditions are also equated with ovum and sperm on the outermost level, on an innermost level connected with compassion and emptiness. And then sometimes they're called bodhicitta, red and white bodhicitta, the awakened mind produced by the union of emptiness and compassion. Mind and Bindu very closely related, with Bindu as the integrator of all different kinds of consciousness. Mind is the creator of everything, but Bindu is the creative spark. And it's Bindu, and she goes into how Bindus in the head relate to the waking state, in the Manakaya and body. Bindus in the throat chakra relate to the dream state, or Sambhogakaya and speech. And Bindus in the heart chakra relate to the state of deep sleep, the place of mind and Dharmakaya. Then on the very subtle level, because we're running out of time, but she says even less possibility of description in ordinary language here, but basically the subtle level is pictured as the red and white Bindus of male and female essence joined together in the center of the heart center. And this is called the indestructible Bindu. Within it is the fundamental life energy, the very subtle prana supporting the very subtle mind, whose nature is luminosity and emptiness, eternal and unchanging from life to life. It's the basic nature of mind and the essence of life, the continuity of luminous awareness. It is bodhicitta, the awakened heart, intrinsic Buddha nature. As she says, we're unable to recognize this very subtle level of mind because our mind is always occupied with our coarse outer level of existence. Ordinary consciousness is incapable of perceiving it. Only when the coarser levels cease can the more subtle levels manifest. To attain this very subtle state, all the relatively coarse aspects of prana and mind must have entered the central nadi and then dissolved into the bindu at the center of the heart. And this is where it relates to the Book of the Dead, or liberation through hearing. This happens involuntarily at death. So the luminosity of death appears to all beings, but if they haven't become accustomed to it in life, they do not recognize it. She says that as well, that there are brief glimpses of this luminosity at orgasm, sneezing, and fainting. And this is why there are Vajrayana practices of sexual union which cultivate this potentiality to recognize this level of empty luminous awareness. And by this and other methods related to completion stage practice, the yogin or yogini can consciously undergo the process that occurs at death. This is what completion stage practice is, culminating in the recognition of luminosity. And this is the realization of the Dharmakaya, the ultimate source of life in all appearances. And realizing that, then one can take on the body of form, arising with the body of the deity, or the physical body in the Nirmanakaya. And this is how one ultimately actually manifests the three kayas on the path. So with that, we've come to the end of our time. It's quite a bit of material to grasp, and I think, again, it's helpful to look at our actual experience in meditation, and that's why I wanted to work in the breathing exercise as well. We get to have some sense, because when we're caught up in ordinary coarse appearances, we just don't recognize these, our inherent nature, our true nature. So with that, I guess we should close with the dedication of merit.
I just want to say one thing, that we're having a discussion group tomorrow, and if anybody wants to talk about any of this material one-on-one, contact me, or I assume Michael. You're being introduced very rapidly to some very profound material in the Vajrayana. Right.
All right. So we'll close by dedicating the merit generated through our practice and study for the benefit of all sentient beings. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Rigdon's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, everybody. Wonderful.
Thank you, John.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See you tomorrow, Chinny.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thank you, Michael.
Good night.
Thanks, Kimberly. Randy.
All right. See you tomorrow.
What do you think, Michael?
We should stop recording.
Oops, let me stop the recording, yeah.